In the village of Ndunga, where the sun kissed the clay rooftops and drums echoed through the valleys, a storm was quietly brewing. Not the kind that cracks the skies, but the kind that shakes hearts. It all began on the day of a wedding, a day meant for joy, but one that tore open secrets like a blade through bark. The bride, Zeli, walked proudly through the path laid with petals. The villagers clapped, music soared, and children danced with wide eyes. But before she could reach the altar, the groom, Maburo, did something no one expected. He stepped forward, turned away from his bride, and walked straight into the crowd. The whispers started immediately. He made his way to a girl standing quietly near the food pots, holding a calabash of water. Her dress was plain, her eyes downcast. Everyone knew her, though few really saw her. He leaned close and said, "You're not supposed to be here. Come with me." The whole courtyard gasped. That was the moment everything changed. But to understand this moment, you must first know the girl he spoke to. Her name was Akia. Akia was the daughter of Mara, a basket weaver, and Olamo, a palm wine tapper. They lived near the river's bend where the fish leapt and the wind whispered secrets. Their home was simple but warm, always smelling of smoked fish and fresh herbs. Akia was their only child, quiet, bright-eyed, and full of heart. Her mother taught her to braid not just hair but kindness into every strand of life. Her father sang her to sleep with tales of courage and stars, but fate has its own paths. One night during the Harmattan winds, sickness crept into their home. Within weeks, both Mara and Olamo were gone, taken by a fever the healer couldn't stop. Orphaned, Akia was taken in by her mother's elder sister, Madame Kunto, who lived in the heart of Ndunga. From that day, Akia's life dimmed like an ember pushed to the corner of the fire. In Kunto's house, she was not treated like family. She became the one who rose before the rooster, swept the compound, fetched water, and pounded yam until her arms shook. No one thanked her. No one asked if she had eaten. Her cousins mocked her quiet ways. The villagers called her lucky to have a roof over her head, but Akia knew better. She was invisible. Years passed and Akia bloomed in silence. She grew into a young woman with soft eyes and a spirit like river light, gentle, flowing, but deep. When her cousin Zeli announced her engagement to Maburo, a respected son of a neighboring clan, the household erupted in celebration. Drums played. For days visitors came with goats and cloth, and the house was painted anew, but behind the scenes it was Akia who bore the weight of it all. She was the one who stitched seat covers late into the night. She cleaned the goat's pen, peeled endless tubers of cassava, and folded over 200 banana leaf napkins. She lit the fires, carried water pots on her head, and served meals while the others posed in front of mirrors. Zeli and her sisters laughed in their silk wrappers and gold bangles. They took selfies with the guests, praised each other's makeup, and practiced their dances for the big day. Akia watched from the shadows, hands raw from scrubbing, heart aching from being left out. "She's just a cousin," Zeli often said when guests asked. "She helps around, that's all." If Akia made a mistake, she was shouted at. If she did things right, they acted like magic had done it. Her name was never on anyone's lips in praise. Still, Akia said nothing. She believed goodness needed no applause, but deep in her chest, something longed to be seen. She had only one dress to her name, an old green wrapper that had faded to grey. She kept it folded neatly under her mat. As the wedding approached, she overheard Zeli's friends laughing. "I hope she doesn't come looking like a bush girl. She'll ruin the photos." "She better stay in the kitchen," another giggled. That evening, Akia quietly approached Madame Kunto. "Auntie," she said softly, "do you have a dress I can borrow for the wedding? Something simple?" Kunto looked her up and down, sneered, and replied, "You, what for? Just stay behind and make sure the stew doesn't burn." Akia nodded. Her eyes stung, but she blinked the tears away. The next morning, Zeli met her in the hallway. "Let's be clear," she said sharply. "This is my day. Don't stand where people can see you. Stay behind the curtain. Don't spoil." The look. Akia said nothing. Her chest felt heavy. She went back to cleaning, polishing shoes she'd never wear, ironing dresses she'd never touch. She prepared the hall like a temple, though she wasn't allowed to pray inside. That night, Akia sat alone in her corner, legs tucked beneath her on the woven mat, gazing through the cracked wooden window as the moonlight poured in like silent rain. The pale light touched her face gently, as if it too saw her. Crickets hummed. Their lullaby and the smell of distant charcoal fires drifted through the air. But Akia's heart wasn't at peace. It churned quietly. Why was it that kindness never seemed enough to be noticed? Why did gentleness make people think you were weak? She had spent her days giving, her nights crying, and her thoughts hoping. And still, they saw her only when they needed something cleaned or cooked. Not when she needed a kind word. Not when she needed someone to ask, "Are you all right?" She stared at the old tin cup near her sleeping mat. It was dented, chipped, and always overlooked, just like her. In her heart, she made a quiet decision. She would no longer try to fit into a place that pushed her out. She would do what was needed, as always, but she wouldn't expect anything. No praise, no thanks, no place beside them. She would stay in the background, that's where they allowed her to be. 2 days before the wedding, chaos filled the house. Zeli's sisters were yelling about the color of the head wraps. The uncles argued about goat meat and musicians. Children ran about spilling things, and aunties barked orders like soldiers. But outside, in the backyard, away from all the loudness, Akia was quietly washing dishes. The basin was stacked high with greasy pots, bowls stained with palm oil, and spoons coated in stew. The water was lukewarm now, her hands wrinkled and red from scrubbing. Her back ached as she bent over, shifting from one dish to the next. Each movement hurt, but she didn't stop. She never did. The sky was bright, the sun harsh, and sweat trickled down her neck. Yet no one came to help. No one even remembered she was back there. The laughter inside the house sounded distant and sharp, like it belonged to another world. Her world was water, soap, pain, and silence. Suddenly, a knock echoed through the gate. It was strong, unexpected, the kind that made everyone pause. A young man stood outside, holding a box wrapped in golden cloth. His voice was calm, but firm. "Is there someone named Akia here?" For a moment, the noise died. Heads turned. "Madam." Kunto looked confused. Zeli rolled her eyes. "Akia? What now?" she muttered, annoyed. From the backyard, Akia wiped her hands on the hem of her wrapper and walked slowly forward. "I'm Akia," she said softly. The man smiled and handed her the, "Boss, this is for you." Then he turned and left without waiting for questions. Akia stood frozen, holding the gift. The gold cloth shimmered in the light, soft and beautiful. Her hands trembled. "Probably a donation," someone said with a sneer. Maybe someone felt sorry for her. Akia didn't answer. She held the box close and walked to her small space near the back of the compound. She sat on her mat, heart pounding. She placed the box in front of her and just looked at it. What could it be? Who could have sent it? Minutes passed before she found the courage to untie the knot and fold back the cloth. Inside, wrapped in tissue as soft as feathers, was a gown. A breathtaking gown. Midnight blue with gold embroidery that shimmered like moonlight on water. The stitching was perfect, the fabric smooth as river silk. It glowed in her hands. On top of the gown was a folded note. Her fingers shook as she opened it. "Please wear this. I want you to be seen, Maburo." Akia stared at the words, "seen." Her vision blurred with tears. She pressed the dress to her chest and wept. Not from pain, but from something even heavier, being noticed, being remembered, being called to step forward instead of staying behind. No one had ever said anything like that to her, ever. But then, like always, her doubts whispered. Why would Maburo send this? Was it pity? Was it just kindness? Did he want her to blend in so she wouldn't embarrass them? Her joy cracked. She shook her head, gently folded the dress, and placed it back in the box. Then she slid the box beneath. Her mat. She didn't tell anyone. She didn't try it on. She didn't even dare imagine herself wearing it. That night, she lay on her side, watching shadows move across the walls. She told herself it was just a thoughtful gesture. Nothing more. Maburo was kind, that was it. He didn't mean anything by it. But deep inside her the words echoed. I want you to be seen. She held onto those words like a secret jewel. Finally the wedding day came. The compound was buzzing with excitement. Drummers tuned their instruments. The scent of grilled meat, fried plantain and jollof rice filled the air. Guests arrived in silken robes and brightly colored head wraps. Golden laughter floated through the breeze. Zeli's dress sparkled as she twirled for pictures. Her friends surrounded her, giggling and fixing each other's headscarves. Aunties shouted instructions. Children ran between stools. The air was loud with joy. And Akia? She stood near the back, dressed in her old grey wrapper. Her hair was tied back. She quietly arranged drinks on a mat and folded napkins. She made sure the elders had water. She adjusted the fruit bowls. Her hands moved, but her heart felt still. No one said hello. No one thanked her. Zeli passed by laughing, her voice like glass. She's still wearing that old thing, someone whispered. Akia heard but didn't flinch. She just wanted the day to pass. Then, as guests were being guided to their seats, Akia moved to the side to avoid being in anyone's way. She stood near the clay jars, holding a stack of napkins. Zeli's brother, Oj, walked by in his fine robe, his chin lifted high. He spotted Akia and scoffed. Still here? Always standing around, trying to be noticed. Move aside. His voice rang out, sharp and mocking. Several guests turned. Akia lowered her head and stepped back, cheeks burning. Her hands trembled. All, her work, her silence, her patience, it meant nothing. She left the courtyard quietly. She walked to the back behind the cooking huts and sat on the low bench beneath the mango tree. The sun above was warm, the sky bright, but Akia felt small, like a drop in a vast ocean. Maybe I shouldn't have come today, she thought. Maybe I should have just stayed away. She looked up at the sky, and the clouds didn't answer. Inside the compound, the drums began to beat. The music swelled. The guests stood. Cameras were raised. Zeli, dressed like royalty, began her slow walk down the aisle. Her smile was wide, her steps proud. But just as she reached the center, a hush fell over the crowd. Maburo, who stood waiting, didn't smile. He didn't look at her. He turned and began to walk, not forward, but back, toward the side of the courtyard, toward the girl in the grey wrapper, toward Akia. She had returned quietly, just to watch the ceremony from afar. She had no plans to be seen, but that moment, as Akia looked up, and there he was, Maburo, not standing still, not lost in thought, walking straight toward her, not toward the bride, not toward the flowers, the canopy, or the elders waiting to bless him, but toward her, the girl in the background, the one no one had dressed, no one had praised, the one standing quietly by the exit, clutching her hands together as if trying to make herself invisible. His footsteps were steady, like he had made up his mind, like nothing could stop him now. The moment his feet moved, the shift was immediate. Whispers ignited, people turned, eyes followed. Even the drummers slowed, uncertain. Zeli stood tall at the center of the aisle, her beaded gown shimmering, her smile practiced and poised. She looked ahead, expecting his eyes, expecting his steps, expecting the applause that would carry her to the altar. But Maburo never even glanced at her. His gaze swept past her like she didn't exist, like her golden lace were woven of air. It landed, solely, surely, on Akia. She gasped, barely able to believe what she was seeing. Her eyes widened, her body stilled. He kept walking. The murmur spread faster than smoke. Is he? No, he wouldn't. He's going to her. He crossed the floor like it was his right. No shame, no hesitation. And when he reached her, everything fell silent, as if the very walls held their breath. He looked directly at her, as if she were not a helper, not a ghost, not a forgotten name, but the beginning of everything. You're not meant to be standing here, he said, his voice low but strong enough to cut through the noise. Akia blinked. Me? She whispered, confused. Her voice barely reached past her lips. Yes, you. She looked over her shoulder, unsure. Maybe he meant someone else. Maybe this was a mistake. But his eyes didn't waver. Then, without asking again, he reached for her hand. The moment his hand touched hers, it was like the earth shifted under her feet. Like she had been standing at the edge of a cliff, and suddenly there was ground beneath her. "Come with me," Maburo said. He didn't shout, he didn't plead, he just spoke, like a man who had already made his choice. And she, still trembling, still lost in the moment, placed her hand in his. All at once the courtyard changed. The drums stopped. A child dropped her cup. An auntie gasped so loudly it echoed. Zeli's smile collapsed. The guests froze in disbelief. And then slowly, with a calm that defied the storm rising around them, Maburo turned. He didn't look at Zeli. Not even for a moment. He didn't offer her an explanation or even a goodbye. His eyes stayed on Akia. He walked forward, leading. Her past rows of stunned relatives, stunned friends, stunned strangers. Each step he took beside her felt like fire and thunder rolled into one. Each breath she drew was like waking up from a life spent asleep. The space between the back of the hall and the altar had never felt so wide. But together they crossed it. Together they broke the silence. And when they reached the front, when he helped her onto the stage, not like someone he pitied, but like someone he honored, Akia realized this was not a mistake. He had seen her. He had always seen her. But just as Maburo and Akia stepped up to the stage, a voice erupted from the crowd. "What is the meaning of this?" Zeli's father had stood, his face red with rage, fists clenched at his sides. "This is disrespect," he shouted. "You insult my daughter? Our name? In front of the entire village?" Beside him, Zeli's mother covered her face in shame, shaking her head, muttering prayers under her breath. Some of the elders looked uneasy. Others nodded slowly as if they had long suspected the truth but never dared to speak it. Madame Kunto, Akia's aunt, hissed from her seat. "She's just a house girl. Look at her. She doesn't belong up there." But from another side of the hall, a deep voice answered back. "She belongs more than anyone. She earned this moment with every quiet sacrifice." It was an old uncle, usually silent, his voice now full of conviction. The tension rippled. Another guest, an elder woman, rose slowly and said, "We watched her work while the others danced. We saw her carry burdens while others laughed. If this is love, then let it speak." But Zeli's father would not calm. "Maburo, you will regret this," he thundered. "This shame will follow you." Maburo turned to face him fully. "I'd rather live with their anger than with a lifetime of lies." He looked to the crowd and raised his voice, not with arrogance but with clarity. "I do not reject your daughter out of cruelty. I do it because truth deserves a place here. And the truth is, I love Akia. She is the one I choose." The crowd split in whispers and gasps. Some eyes filled with tears, others with fury. A few clapped in quiet defiance of tradition. And on the stage, Akia, once a shadow, stood tall beside him. Her hands were shaking. She was in full confusion. People who had never spoken to her before were now staring. Their eyes, once blind to her presence, now clung to every thread of her borrowed gown, every detail of her stunned expression. Fingers pointed, voices whispered. Her name, once forgotten, was now echoing from corner to corner like a secret, finally exposed to the sun. Akia felt frozen in the light. The heat of 100 gazes made her skin feel too tight. The attention was not kind. It was sharp, overwhelming, loud. Her heart pounded against her ribs like it was trying to flee. She wasn't used to this. She had spent years becoming small, becoming quiet, becoming invisible. And now suddenly she was standing in front of the world, with all its judgment and noise pressing down on her. She looked at Maburo. Her eyes wide, her breathing shallow, her hand trembled in his. "I can't," she whispered, barely audible, trying to pull away. Her feet inched backward. Her instinct was to run, to escape the crowd, the stares, the shame. But Maburo didn't let go. He tightened his grip, not forceful, but certain. His thumb gently brushed the back of her hand, grounding her. He leaned in slightly, his voice low but steady. "Don't go, Akia, you've always belonged, you just didn't know it." Those words stopped her. They struck her chest like the first real breath after drowning. All the years of silence, of being overlooked, pushed aside, reduced to chores and shadows. They unraveled in that single sentence. Her lips parted, but no sound came out, only tears. Not from pain, but from release, from the ache of finally being seen. Her knees wobbled, but she didn't fall. Maburo's hand anchored her. In the far corner, Madame Kunto, Akia's aunt, hissed like a snake cornered. "He's blind! She's just a house girl! This is disgraceful!" But just beside her, a young woman no older than Akia stood tall. She looked the aunt in the eye and said firmly, "No, this is what it looks like when someone chooses love over show." The crowd rippled with divided emotions. Some guests stood, shaking their heads in disapproval. Others remained seated, watching with widened eyes, holding their breath. A few even lifted their phones, capturing every second, every heartbeat, every tear. Yet in the eye of that storm, Akia and Maburo stood still. He turned slowly to face the crowd, his voice unwavering. "Anyone who wishes to leave may do so, but we will not stop. We will finish this the right way." Silence met him. Then a few footsteps echoed. A couple of guests left quietly, murmuring, behind hands. Others shifted in their seats but stayed. Some leaned in closer. Maburo called for another priest, not the one chosen by Zeli's family, but a humble man who had blessed births and buried the old with truth in his prayers. This man stepped forward, calm and wise, carrying no judgment in his eyes. The ceremony began, not with trumpets or fireworks, but with the rustle of wind and the stillness of sincerity. The priest looked between the two and smiled softly. "We are not always chosen by blood or by plan. Sometimes we are chosen by truth." Maburo turned fully to Akia, his expression open, gentle. "Akia," he said, voice clear, voice sure. "I see you. I see your strength, your kindness, your patience. I choose you, not for today, but for every day after. And I vow to honor you, not just with words, but with actions." Tears traced Akia's cheeks like rain sliding down a window pane. She reached up, wiped one away, then held his hands tighter. "You gave me something no one ever did," she replied, her voice soft but resonant. "You gave me my voice when I had none. You looked at me and saw a person, not a burden. I choose you too." There were no cheers, only silence, and in that silence something sacred bloomed. An old woman in the front row who had said nothing all day suddenly sniffled and dabbed her eyes. A teenage boy sitting beside her blinked fast, pretending dust had entered his eye. It wasn't the grandest wedding, but it was the most honest. And honesty in that moment was more beautiful than any flower or gown. When the vows were spoken and the priest declared them bound, not just by ceremony, but by courage, Maburo and Akia turned. They didn't walk down a red carpet. They walked a simple path. No confetti, no staged photos. Just two souls side by side, hearts beating in rhythm, steps steady with purpose. Every person who remained knew they had witnessed something rare, something unshakable, a story rewritten, a love reclaimed, a girl who had once hidden behind trays and tasks, now holding her head high, her shoulders back. Akia, once unseen, had become unforgettable. And in that hall, for the first time ever, she wasn't the girl in the background. She was the reason the whole room stood still. In a world that often praises noise and sparkle, true worth can be found in quiet strength and unseen kindness. Akia was never the loudest, the prettiest, or the most praised, but she was real. And in the end, truth found her, love chose her, and courage made her shine. Never let anyone tell you that your silence is weakness. Sometimes, the softest. Hearts carry the loudest power. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with someone who needs to hear. You've always belonged. You just didn't know it yet. More African tales are coming your way. Stay rooted, stay kind, and see you in the next story.